African proverb says the child who is not embraced by the village will burn it down to feel the warmth. What time in your life have you been closest to starting the fire?
I had a co-worker at a non-commission-based retail job where a co-worker would repeatedly sabotage my sales so she could get a lot of credit apps and a high GSP, average hour sales. She would overhear my pitch for cards, required, and then lie to the customer so they would apply. I would have to try and rectify what she said while she hovered over me. She did many other questionable things, and I reported her multiple times, as did my co-workers and customers. Now, one time I got lucky and an 18-year kid came in you buy the most expensive desktop we have on display. 2.5K. She saw me do this sale, but I needed a manager to approve a tiny discount, but my radio was dead. Co-worker was watching me the entire time, so I asked if she'd call for the manager. She stone cold ignores me. I go for the MGR, she prints out paperwork on the computer and tries to sell it to him. When I return, she literally yells at me in front of the customer to give her the sale. BC she worked too. I ignored her and didn't give her the sale. When I reported this, as did the customer, he was mortified. I was literally told by my boss ignore when she does that. She's a middle child, so she does stuff like that. I was tired of the stupid lack of action, so I filed an hour complaint regarding her, and 5 of my managers for not addressing it. They all got reamed for it. Only one is still in a management position, the rest were eventually demoted or laid off.
The absurd thing is we made no commission. She was doing this for her own bragging rights and to look better than the department in sales numbers. Unfortunately, it has a mixed ending. I left that job a couple months later to move to Korea. I was asked to work there again when I returned a year later, but was denied only by the one manager who is still there that I filed the complaint against.
I was raised in a cult. There were 11 kids, with 4 moms, and the leader had really convinced our moms that he was the Archangel Michael. I tried to run away over and over in my late teenage years, hiking across the desert in the dark to get to the highway, where I would try to hitch a ride. Every single time, well-intentioned truckers called the police to report a little girl walking along the highway with her thumb out. I am short, and I had been malnourished my entire childhood, so even after I turned 18, I was underdeveloped and couldn't convince anyone I was an adult. Michael always called me in as a runaway and the cops would take me back. The last time, I was 20, and I felt so hopeless when I saw the police lights. I thought very seriously about trying to attack the officer with my knife, that I always brought in case I was picked up by a crazy person. I knew I was too small and weak to actually hurt the officer, but he would be obliged to arrest me and send me to jail. It was the only way out I could think of.
Damn, I'm sorry to hear that. Did it work? I feel like a lot of us would be very interested in hearing your story on how you got out.
Sorry, I was in a hurry because my husband was waiting for me to watch a show with him. I answered the question, more or less, and didn't think people would be very interested to hear the rest. I never tried to use the knife on the officer. It was the only way out that I could think of, but I was afraid I might accidentally actually hurt him, or he'd hurt me, and I couldn't find the courage. I just gave up. I sat in his back seat and cried until I got home, and just quit trying to escape for at least 8 or 9 months. The biggest problem with trying to escape was nowhere to prove my age. The next biggest problem was money. I was going to college on a Pell Grant, and was working at the college as a work-study. Michael would have us sign over our checks, because we didn't need the money when he was supporting us, and we couldn't cash the checks without photo ID anyway. And he wouldn't let us learn to drive, because that would have given us a literal key to independence. Over the course of almost 2 years, my boss at my work-study job got the truth of my home situation out of me, and she helped me figure out what to do. She told me which documents I would need to find and get hold of to get photo ID. Then when I had my birth certificate and SS card, she drove me to the DMV to get an ID. She also hired me for a second job there at the college, tutoring. So I was teaching adults to read and teaching Braille to the newly blind, during every free hour of my day. Michael never knew about that job. Every 2 weeks, I'd give Michael my check from the one job, and my boss would take me to cash the other. She also helped me set up a bank account, and taught me to drive. I found 2 sisters who were willing to take me in as a roommate, and I had enough income to pay my portion of the rent. One of the sisters drove out to Michael's property to pick me up, and Michael called me in as a runaway, expecting it to go as it always had, but that time, I had proof of my age, and I was nearly 21 by that time. Edit, to clarify a few things I keep being asked about. It was a poor community college in Arizona in the late 90s, so small that they had to have many campuses in small towns over about a quarter of the state. We didn't have student IDs. The high school in the town where I graduated got photo student IDs sooner than the college did, though both were after I was done there. My mom filled out my FAFSA paperwork, W-4s, etc. She had my birth certificate and SS card. She didn't need photo ID for that stuff. Once we turned 18, they couldn't collect welfare for us anymore, and sending us to college on the government's dime while we did work-study jobs was lucrative for them. It still didn't leave me any way to prove my age in the middle of the night, at the side of a highway, when cops would ask for it I didn't have, when they had a report of a runaway teen matching my description. As to how we got to and from the college, one of the mothers drove us everywhere. She was the only one allowed to drive. That's why I was at the college long enough hours to have a second job Michael didn't know about. We would pile into the vehicle and arrive there at 7 a.m., when the earliest classes started, and all leave together at 9 o'clock or 10 p.m., depending on our class schedules for that semester. I can't really answer the question about why I never ran away from the college itself, and always ran at night. Part of it was that one of the few things the kids could do to get approval from Michael, was to tell him something another of us was doing wrong, so the people who should have been my allies were constantly policing me instead. Also, if I left during the day, someone at the small college or in the small town would be able to tell Michael who they had seen me with, but I honestly don't remember thinking about it very much. Like, in retrospect I can see reasons I wouldn't have done it that way, but I can't remember actually even thinking about it at the time. Like it somehow just never occurred to me. I guess mostly it was just that nighttime felt safe and secret, and daytime felt exposed.
Have you ever contacted them since or ran into them?
I'm still in contact with my mom and brother, who both got out. I stay in contact with a couple of the other girls, who also got out, but it's mostly superficial Facebook staying in contact. 2 of the women died, and 1 is still with Michael, along with some of the children, who are now adults in their 30s.
This is quite shocking to me as I grew up here in India idealizing the West, and believe that they are not superstitious and blind in faith at all.
Wife was a senior staff for a local science fiction convention. Not only was she an unpaid volunteer, she had to take a vacation day off work and pay for her hotel room and parking. On the morning that the convention started, she was setting up the first of the 3 rooms she was responsible for: manual labor, moving tables, setting up shelves and loading them with stuff, and somebody came in, took her ID badge off her desk, and brought it to the convention's lost and found. Convention LF lady told wife that lost badges have a $5 fee to get them back. Wife looked at the badge, looked at her, and said, "Keep it. I'm going home. Have a nice convention." Wife was about 25 feet down the hall when LF lady caught up to her and returned her badge.
Wow. It was like they were trying to burn down their own village at that point.
More like setting a nuke on their own village. The lady is working for free, and you have the nerve to make her pay you some made-up fee.
After stealing the badge.
Exactly. Good on ops for saying fuck you to them and showing them that she's not ready to put up with their bullshit.